Clerk, we're reporting out a closed session. We have one item. First item, 4.1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council reporting of closed session. The motion is to receive the agenda, receive the report, and that confidential direction to staff be confirmed.
Okay, mover, seconder. Councillor Gallo, Councillor Weiss. Record a vote.
Recorded vote has been requested for council reporting out of closed session. Councillor Gallo, how do you vote? Councillor Gallo votes yes. Councillor Gilliland is absent. Councillor Weiss? Councillor Weiss votes yes. Councillor Kim's absent. Mayor Maracus?
No.
Councillor Gardner?
Ms. Gardner, you're on mute.
Thank you. Yeah, I vote yes.
Thank you.
And Councillor Thompson is absent. The motion carries.
Thank you. Confirming bylaw. Someone like to move that. Councillor Gallo, Councillor Kim. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Kim, Councillor Gallo, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Clerk, time is 7:02. I'm going to call this general committee meeting to order. The town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with these lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas, recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. Shared understanding of the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Kim, Councillor Gallo, comments or questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. No community presentations, delegations. We have two of them. 6.1, Oma Sewhdat, resident, and Frank D'Amico, project manager, in regards to sewer connection on 130 Edward Street. Gentlemen. Yes, I believe we're bringing the mic up there. Yep.
You want to speak?
Yeah.
I didn't realize I couldn't hear what you're saying, Tom.
Frank, I'll give, if you can just state your name and you have 5 minutes and
Okay.
floor is yours. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here, and I have to apologize that I have to have this special accommodation. I screwed up my left knee, and my right knee went too. So I just want to do what I can to help my good friends here. There's a little bit of a little history I'm going to give you fairly quickly on this particular property. It's at 130 Edward Street. I was not involved in the severance, but it was severance from two properties on Kennedy, and they took their 200-foot lot and made it into a 50-foot by 100-foot lot. And during the that period of severance, all the different committees or what do they call them? Departments had their say, including the engineering department, and there was no talk about sewer. Just basically, we have to accommodate. We have to connect to the water service, which is there, and also the sewer. But the sewer is not there; it's just down the street, which is not a big deal. We just take it down to north on Kennedy or south on Cousin at the corner. Anyway, there was no talk about anything else, but we have to do the connections. Then I went through the committee of adjustment, and I got involved, and went through committee of adjustment. Finally got approval committee. But before we get that, we had all the different departments made their comments. Trees was one of the main issues, but engineering, they had theirs say, didn't say much about anything about main sewers, but just regular, really normal connections. Then we got to the building permit stage, and there we are, the same idea, the same department made their comments, and nothing happened there. And but then I've talked to the engineering department to put something together, and they said, "Oh, you got to get the engineering drawings done." We hired the engineering company, and they did exactly what we thought it should be. Is like we come out with from the house to the property line and go south to Cousins and connect our 4-inch or 6-inch sewer. We sent that to the town, to the engineering department, and he says, no, we want a main sewer 8-inch right in the middle of the road, all the way down. Let me back up a little bit. But when we did the building permit, I asked for the cost of the work that is going to be done there, and I had one price of 85,000, and there was another price around 95, and then the townspeople that work for the town, the contractor, he was in about 125,000, and that was set up. That's exactly what we would come out of the house and go south to Cousins and connect to the main sewer. Now that we're almost ready to move in, we're talking to the engineering department, and they said, no, we want a main sewer there, 2 manholes, and we just got a price in from the town's engineers went through their particular builder, and it was like about $270,000. And we're talking about a house that's under 3,000 square feet. They cannot afford it to pay for a main sewer on that street. I mean, I can understand if we were doing 7, 8, 9, 10 houses, and you could accommodate it, but not when you got one little house on a 50 by 100-foot lot under 3,000 square feet. How can we put a main sewer in when there's an alternative to just connect to the existing sewer on Cousin or on Kennedy, which is like we go south on Cousin, it's basically 225 feet. The other way, it's about 175 if we go north. But I thought going uphill, going downhill to Cousin would be a better situation. And that's what we're here for now. We had budgeted around $85,000 to do this particular work. Because normally we just connect right in front of the house, and all the infill I've done in town, that's what you do. This one here, well, it's the same thing. The only difference, I got to take it down further south, but I've never ended up putting in a main sewer. I mean, the only time I done a main sewer is about 40 houses I did in Asia. Then, of course, we had to connect to the infrastructure of the town, but we went the main sewer in the subdivision. But there's only one single little house. So we don't mind paying $85,000 towards it if you guys want a main sewer there. But why don't we just connect to the existing one line on the boulevard and get it done and over with? It's over. I know you guys don't allow holding tanks anymore. It has been quite a few years, but they're sort of stuck. We can connect to the water, but we got to be able to connect to a sewer. It's just the only way. That's basically it. And what else? Can you add anything to it?
You're at your 5 minutes, Frank. So I was just going to ask you to wrap up if you wanted.
What? I can't hear you. Sir.
I was going to ask you to wrap up because you're at your 5 minutes.
That's it.
Okay. Perfect. Council, first, can I get a motion to receive delegation? Councilor Kim, second by Councilor Reese. Any questions for the delegate? Councilor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, good. Sorry, I'm on a new computer. To the delegate, I'm not sure what you're asking us to do. I mean, this sounds like a terrible situation, and one you weren't prepared for. What is it that you would like council to help you with? Exactly.
Well,
Frank,
there's a question to me, sorry.
questions to you, yes.
Yeah, well, the only thing is to allow normally when an infill, you do connect to the existing main sewer that is usually there. It is there, but just further down down a bit. We're talking 200 feet versus the normal in front of the house. Normally you would think there's a sewer there. I can't see any part of this town that's in the proper town. I can understand if you're outside, and there's all of a sudden got septic, but you can't put septic here because it's too small a lot. What I want them to do is basically allow us to do the connect the way it is. We'll spend the money to do it that way. But if they want to do a main sewer, they want us to build a main sewer for them. But if somebody else comes around with putting a bunch of houses on the north side of the west, I guess, east side, they could connect to the sewer that we paid for. Does that make any sense?
Counselor?
Just for clarification, you must have got a permit to do this and staff came out and this was never discussed.
Frank?
Well, what I just see happening is for us to connect to the existing place, failing that, if the town wants to upgrade that, do a main sewer there now, we'll accommodate them and we'll, the town can do it and we'll pay towards it.
Frank, can I get you to speak into the mic a little bit closer?
A big pardon?
See if you can speak into the mic a little bit closer.
Okay.
Yeah, that's better.
That's fine. No, if the town decides that they want a main line there, a main sewer, you go to 8-inch sewer, 2 manholes at that 250, 280 cost, we're willing to pay what it would cost us to do the other way, which is going down and connect to at Cousins, which would be about $85,000 to $100,000 maximum. We would give $100,000 towards it.
Thank you very much. I understand. I understand, but I don't have a solution. Mr. Mayor, what would you suggest? I don't think there's anybody around the table that can speak to this. Any staff?
Well, there is, but we would speak to it under new business. Right now, we're just having questions to the delegate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor to Frank. Just looking at the overview of your delegation notes, and I haven't talked to planning in advance of your delegation. 130 Edward Street, that is the house in question?
I'm sorry, say that again? Yes.
Okay, and was there a house previous? It was a new, like a lot severage, and then you built a brand new house? I'm just curious because I just would feel like there should be sewer already there.
It's a brand new house that the people that own the 2 houses on Kennedy, they had lots were 200 feet deep. They saw an opportunity to make a couple of dollars here. So they severed 50 feet off their backyard and turned it into a 50 by 100 foot lot. And then Mr. and Mrs. Sewhdat came around and bought it.
Councillor?
Okay, I think I've seen that house. I just wanted to make sure that that's what it was.
Yeah.
I guess
Cute little house.
yeah, okay, yeah, I know it is. I guess my next questions will be for staff. I would think that you would automatically have sewer close by just because you are in a very established neighborhood. So I get what you're saying, but I'll have the rest of my questions will be directed to staff. So, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions for the delegate? Yeah, call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you for coming this evening. Next, council, we have Bowen Lou, resident regarding tennis court permit in Fleury Park. Online. Welcome. Lou, you have 5 minutes and the floor is yours.
Oh, I see. Dear esteemed mayor and councillors, I'm Bowen Liu, an independent tennis coach, and I would like to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address you today. I'm here to discuss a critical issue that I'm facing with regards to the availability of tennis courts in Fleury Park. For the past 2 years, I have been providing tennis training service on Court 3 in Fleury Park, and I have been issued a permit by the city to do so. However, I was recently informed that my permit for course 3 has been revoked, which has come as a significant shock to me. This is because I had already obtained and paid for a new permit for course 3 for this year, and I had already made preparations for the upcoming season. The facility booking administrator, Mason Gooch, has stated that the council-approved policy only allows for the use of 2 courts at Fleury Park, and the use of course 3 last year was an oversight. As a result, all permits for course 3 have been cancelled. Unfortunately, I'm unable to secure desirable time slots on court 1 or 2, as they are currently occupied by one tennis training organization. This sudden change has had a huge impact on my personal life, as my annual income relies heavily on the summer tennis training I provide. With less than a month before the start of the season, I'm unable to find another court that is suitable for my clients. Therefore, I have no other option but to request your assistance in this matter. I respectfully request that you grant me a permit for court 1 for the time slots that I had before, or allow me to have my permit back for court 3. It is unfair for one group to have 2 courts while canceling the only court that I had access to. I believe that the issue can be resolved if we work together to find a solution that benefits all parties involved. I appreciate your attention to this matter, and I look forward to a resolution that allows me to continue providing tennis training to my clients. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. Council, first, can I get a motion to receive? Councilor Gallo, Councilor Gilliland. Any questions for the delegate? Councilor Gallo?
Thank you. Thank you for delegating. I'm just trying to understand some of the timeline here. Could you just go through, you booked them, and then at what point were they revoked?
Mr. Liu?
I believe, yes. I believe I booked this court. I have already obtained this court at the start of this year, and this permit is revoked. I believe it's at the start of March, so it's a month ago.
Councilor?
Sorry, just to be clear, how much time between when you booked and got confirmation were you told that it was revoked?
Mr. Liu?
So it's, yeah, it's been I believe it's been 2 months or 3 months. Yeah.
Councilor?
And the explanation was, through you, Mr. Mayor, that your previous booking in previous years was in error, and they discovered the error and revoked your permit?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, thank you. I'll have some questions for staff once we get there. Thank you for your delegation.
Councilor Gilliland?
Thank you.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Liu. Just want to clarify what I heard correctly. From the time that you submitted your application for a permit for 3 courts, it took 2 months for staff to get back to you to say you cannot have 3 courts, you can only have 2 courts?
Oh, no, I mean, yes, sorry, Councilor. I mean, court 3, it's just 1 court. So there are 4 courts in Fleury Park. There are court 1, 2, 3, 4. So I obtained a permit for court 3. That's a single court.
Councilor?
Thank you. I just wanted to know how long it was in between, but I can talk to staff. Did you happen to have a conversation with staff about some of the reasonings why your permit was accepted last year and the year prior versus now? Did you have that conversation already?
Mr. Liu?
Yes, we did. The Mission Gooch told me it was an oversight for the last 2 years. So the city council only approves for 2 courts for the permit in Fleury Park. So court 3's permit is an oversight. So they have to cancel all the permits on court 3.
Okay,
Councilor?
perfect. And the year prior, I understand, was opening up after COVID, and they were trying to I guess, encourage active activity and play. And so they had opened it up during that time. So it was a special exception.
Lou?
I'm not sure if it's a special exception or not.
Okay.
Counselor?
Okay, that's fine. I'll wait and speak with staff, but the long story short is that you have 2 courts that are permitted currently right now, and you're looking for 3 courts to permit for your
No,
activities.
Mr. Lou?
That's not what I'm saying here. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's one organization already occupied the court 1 and the court 2, and the city has to cancel the only court I have on court 3. I have no court.
Gotcha.
I have no court.
Yeah, okay,
I
I
see.
understand. I understand. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Counselor Weiss?
Thank you. And thank you for the delegation, Mr. Liu. Could you give me an idea of the number of people you suggested before? You had 38 clients, 20 of whom were Aurora. Have you gone out and done advanced marketing? Do you have registrants in this program already? I'm just interested in the impact of this, what it would have for you. What do you have
Oh,
registered in your
Mr. Liu?
organization now?
I'm a certified OTA instructors, and I didn't do any registrations. I didn't do any registrations. Yeah. If that answer your question.
So,
Counselor?
thank you. Through you, Mayor. So your client base is more drop-in and you do it that way, or do you run tennis programs on court 3?
Mr. Lou?
The way I run this program is we have all the summer prepared for yes, this is like a program for the whole summer. Yes.
So my question is, how many do you have registered for that program right now?
Oh, I already got like because the court issues make me cannot make sure. So at this moment, I believe I have about 10 people already in this program. But normally every summer for the last 2 years, it's about 30 to 40 students I have for one summer.
Counselor?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Counselor Kim, before I go, I just mentioned to Counselor Gallo, we all received an email from Ms. McDougall in regards to this on March 31st. So if you haven't happened to see it, just if you want to pull it up on your email, you can take a look at, there's a bit of an explanation as well in there. So Counselor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Liu, thank you very much for delegating. You said that this is going to be a disruption to your income, and you've done this annually. May I ask where you booked court in previous years for your tennis program?
Lou?
I just started this tennis training service a couple years ago. I didn't do tennis training service before that.
Thank you.
Counselor?
And through you, Mr. Mayor. So last year or the year before, you never booked courts anywhere else?
No, I don't do the tennis training service 2 years ago. I started doing it I just started this business in the Fleury Park, and I always get a permit to do so.
Thank you.
Counselor?
So through Mr. Mayor, so this is your first year running this business?
No, this is the
First
third year to run this business.
Okay, so then my original question is, where did you rent tennis or where did you book tennis courts before?
Before I booked in Fleury Park, I
it
got
was
permit
always-
from the
okay.
city. Yeah.
So you were always, through you, Mr. Mayor, so you were always at Fleury Park even last year and 2 years ago?
Yes. That's yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the delegate? Seeing none, Ms. Liu, thank you very much for coming this evening. Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Consent agenda, we don't have. Advisory committee meetings, we don't have. Number 9, consideration of items requiring discussion. First up, we have Parks and Rec Master Plan draft presentation. Of a presentation to be provided by Todd Brown, President and Principal Planner, Monteith Brown. Welcome. Give you council, we need 15 minutes for this presentation. So I need a motion to waive procedure to allow for that extra 5. Councillor Kim, Councillor Weiss. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Round.
Thank you very much, Mayor and members of the council, staff and public. It's a pleasure to present the Parks and Recreation Master Plan to you tonight. This is a draft plan. So at this moment in time, we are really looking to test the plan with you, with the public and stakeholders to make sure that we've got it right before we come back to council for approval. So really, it's again in draft stage. Next slide. So in terms of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, it really guides decision-making over the next 5 years to the year 2027. It's an update to your 2016 plan. Essentially, you update your master plan every 5 years. And so it takes into account new growth factors, recognizing intensification, and other legislation that is occurring that may impact growth, participation interests, and public input. Next slide. The scope of the plan includes indoor recreation facilities, so things like arenas, swimming pools, gymnasiums, outdoor facilities, including sports fields, playgrounds, sports courts, things of that nature, as well as parks and open space. The plan considers factors such as public and stakeholder input, demographic and growth data, participation trends, municipal benchmarking against other communities similar to yourselves, and supporting documentation, policies, and studies. Next slide. So the community engagement took place early on, and it was quite extensive. It included members of council. So hopefully you met with one of my colleagues in terms of getting your input. It may have been online. We undertook a community survey with 544 respondents. We noted that a number of those were non-residents. So in total, there were 455 residents of the town that responded to that survey. We also undertook a pop-up booth and engaged people at the farmers market, and over 75 people participated in that and came out and gave their input. There was youth consultation, staff consultation, councillor consultation, and then we've encouraged written comment throughout the process and continue to do so to this day. Next slide. Just wanted to highlight a couple of elements of the community survey for your reference. Most popular parks and recreation activities. So these are things that people currently do. Walking and hiking, special events in parks, cycling, indoor swimming, and playgrounds. What those generally have in common is that many of those facilities are things that people can schedule on their own time. They don't have to sign up for an activity or commit to a 16-week program. So we see that really as a trend right across the province. And that has been occurring for probably a good decade or more. And next slide. We did want to understand, for people who are unable to participate as often as they'd like, what are their main barriers? And so lack of desired facility or program was the top barrier, followed by program or facility is full, and then lack of personal time. We identified that outdoor recreation facilities had the largest gap in terms of expectations. So 86% felt that they were important to their household, but only 60% felt that they were satisfied. Again, I think because of COVID, we had a lot more people outside in parks and on trails, and perhaps their expectations were not quite met, or what they thought they would be at that time. So as a result, next slide. So as a result, we asked them about priorities in the coming years for facility investment. The top priorities identified were nature trails, park washrooms, multi-purpose fitness trails, parkland acquisition, and playgrounds. So again, it relates more to outdoor, casual, drop-in type of activities. Next slide. So some of the broader themes that we've identified is expanding options for outdoor recreation facilities. We heard things about the need for disc golf, outdoor rinks, off-leash dog areas, and splash parks. Enhancing existing facilities, that would include things like lighting or repurposing of sports fields and other amenities. Supporting local and regional organizations through sport-friendly facilities. So when you're looking at your indoor pools, your artificial indoor turf, making sure that they can accommodate the various sporting events. And then changing demographics, we recognize that there's a tremendous amount of growth, diversity, a growing senior population or older adult population, and persons with disability that we want to make sure have the opportunity to not only get into facilities, but to participate in those activities being offered. Next slide. Other trends and emerging influences, these are things that we're broadly seeing across the province, but they also apply to your community as well. Communities are increasingly viewing recreation and parks as essential services and believe that these services will be critical in terms of contributing to the recovery from COVID-19. Recent staffing and volunteer shortages have created challenges with maintaining the level of service right across the province. Outdoor recreation facilities or outdoor recreation is on the rise, and many communities are reimagining existing spaces in order to accommodate the wide range of interests that people have in the parks that are within communities. And municipalities are placing a growing emphasis on inclusion, barrier-free access, affordability, and climate change. The next slide. In the draft plan, there are about 45 recommendations. So I'm not going to go through every recommendation, but we did want to highlight just a few of them in each of the sections. So for indoor recreation facilities, we believe that there is a need to continue to pursue options for securing land to support a community center in the southwest part of your community. That would include an indoor swimming pool consistent with the pool study that was done fairly recently. Also a gymnasium, walking track, and possibly additional facilities if the land base could accommodate it. And preparing a study to consider the arena needs and options for repurposing the AFLC rink into dryland training or non-ice activity space. Now, that is a sort of, when we're looking at timeframes, that's a little bit later in the plan. So we recognize that there is demand for that ice pad at the current moment, but over the next number of years, some significant investment will be required for that facility. And trends suggest that there is declining participation in arena sports. So it's really a matter of monitoring to see if you need that fifth ice pad or whether you could do without it. And if you can do without it, then there are needs out there that it could accommodate beyond that. But we're not making a recommendation at this moment in time to get rid of that as an ice pad. It's really more about monitoring. Next slide, please. For outdoor recreation facilities, completing a scoped review and update of the sports field development strategy with a focus on replacement options for the Stronach fields, looking at artificial turf, partnerships, and other opportunities with school boards and so forth. We know that town staff are currently reviewing the document in terms of what accomplishments have taken place, and they will be doing a refresh in the near term. Establishing an outdoor pickleball complex, we think at least 6 courts would be justified at this point in time, and consider possibility of club partnership options. Pickleball, for those of you unaware, is one of the fastest growing sports in Canada. It has tremendous demand. It really had the highest demand through the older adult population, but we're seeing that now in younger age groups. We're seeing it taught in high schools and so forth. So that demand continues to grow, but it's a matter of making sure that we don't overbuild in the short term. So it's more a matter of recommending the 6+ courts now and monitor that and see how well they're utilized. Advancing reconstruction of the Aurora Family Leisure Complex skateboard park. We know that it's in a condition where it has many cracks. There's water that lays in it, and so it really does diminish from the quality that young kids and others who are interested in action-wheeled sports would be interested in. Addressing the gaps in playgrounds and sports courts through the provision of future parks, and preparing a business plan to consider options for a refrigerated outdoor ice rink. This could be refrigerating one of your current natural ice pads in terms of location. Next slide. For parkland, updating the parkland policies to reflect changing legislation and Aurora's urban structure. Many of you are aware that Bill 23 has come out, which will affect the provision of parkland through development. So it's a matter of taking that into account. Striving to achieve a service level of 2 hectares per 1,000 residents, which would result in about 17.2 hectares of additional parkland being required by 2031. And taking a parkland first approach to securing land and maximizing community access to non-municipal sites. So that is, again, looking at partners such as school boards that have land that could accommodate some of those activities that the public are looking for and giving them access within their neighborhood. And developing a strategy for the renewal of park sites as they continue to age and perhaps the renewal of the areas surrounding them. Confederation Park is one of those examples. Next slide. The last area is service delivery and program support, fully implementing the recreation user fee and pricing policy, conducting a comprehensive review of the permitting procedures and allocation policies. We understand that town staff are in the process of looking at that or will be doing so during this current year. Undertaking a recreation program review and special events policy to clarify levels of service, and continuing to collaborate with schools to enhance access and creation of community hubs within neighborhoods. Last slide. So just in closing for the presentation, what we're asking of council tonight or through staff is that you give us permission to post the draft master plan on the project website so that we can solicit public input and feedback with a deadline of May 3rd. We're also looking for that same feedback from council members. Hosting a public open house on a date yet to be determined, but certainly in that same time frame. And then ultimately coming back to council with a revised plan on June 6th that would take into account what we heard from yourselves, what we heard from stakeholders, the public and staff to make sure that we've got it right. It's really between the draft plan and the final plan is the time to test it, to make sure that we got the information correct, that we have the inventory correct, and that we heard people right and we didn't miss anything. So with that, I am pleased to answer any questions or take down any comments that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Council recommendations that report number CMS 23-010 be received for information. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Gilliland, second. Councillor Kim. Comments or questions to the report or to the presentation? Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. We just recently got this document, so I've been working my way through it, and I certainly haven't gone through it to the level of detail that I want. I just have one question, and it's not specific. It's just, will I or any of us have an opportunity to sit down with you if we do go through it and have a bunch of questions to be able to correspond or have a meeting or something with you to go over them? Through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr.
Brown.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We haven't had a specific dialogue with staff in terms of how that might work with conversations with councillors, but certainly at the very least, if you had questions or comments, I would imagine that town staff would be happy to sit down with you and forward that information on to you. But we're open to whatever works well. We want to make sure that we get it right and that it's something that council embraces as your plan and not our plan. So we look forward to your comments.
Council.
Thank you. And I realize I can send correspondence to staff. My question was, would you be available? And maybe I'll ask staff that. I understand maybe you're in a position not to answer that, but I'll ask staff at some point whether that's a possibility. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Weiss.
Yes, thank you. It's a very good report. I want to thank you for all the work you did, and I'm particularly interested in the demographic information that you pulled from the census and the diversity and the language issues that face us in the community. And that's great. I've been through it for a few hours, and it's a big report, and I have a lot of questions asked, but they're not appropriate for right here, but I'll certainly provide them to you and through other members of Sport Aurora who may have not had an opportunity to have that conversation. The one thing that I know has been happening is the Aquatics Advisory Group has met a number of times and discussing whether it's a 25-meter pool. We all see from the data that swimming is one of those things that's very highly valued in this community. A lot of it has to do with taking swimming lessons and learn to swim and swim to survive and the rest of that. But the competitive side is lacking in another 25-meter pool. So is that off the table according to your information and your recommendations? Because I saw that you suggested it may be a good idea and there may be some ways to do that, but it doesn't seem to be in your recommendations. Can you give me a little bit of your professional interest in that?
Mr. Brown?
Absolutely, through you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I won't take credit for the document. One of my colleagues was the primary author. Unfortunately, he's on holiday, so I'm taking his place. So I will do my best to answer your questions. In terms of the aquatics, we are recommending, as per your aquatic feasibility study, that you do need a new pool in the southwest area, and that really should be 25-meter, probably 6 to 8 lane pool, so more competitive. We recognize the Aurora Leisure Family Complex as with its I guess more curvature design, and it was sort of that leisure design complex that was popular when it was built. It does have limitations associated with it, so we certainly support that. Where we comment about more competitive is if the town wanted to move towards a 50-meter pool, then that would be something that is beyond a community need and more of a decision of whether you would want to invest in something that is more for tourism, creating competition with your swimmers, and also seeking partners to help fund that. Because once you get into a facility of that scale, a regular pool will run a fairly significant operating deficit. A 50-meter pool runs a substantially more operating deficit. So just I guess it was just more of a we support the 25-meter, just not larger at the moment.
Council.
Thank you. I just wanted to hear the context of where you were making decisions and recommendations. And I saw that where they're talking about repurposing the family leisure complex. And I know that's because it's become out of date and it's inefficient and a variety of other environmental factors. But the comment about not replacing it as an ice surface is something that concerns me, and it will concern all the people who use the ice surfaces right now. So I'm interested in the repurposing of the FLC because it's likely going to be of value to use that space for other purposes. But I wouldn't like people to walk away from here thinking that the ice surface will be going away and it may never come back again when you go from 5 to 4. So that's not really your intent here. You're just you're saying this is a possibility if then, because your population information says that we're going to increase by 20,000 or so people by 2050. And so no question getting rid of facilities, because I've never ever heard of going backwards and getting rid of an ice surface in any communities because of the popularity of winter sports. So just a comment on that, if you don't mind.
So sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. So with regard to the arena item, what we've identified in the report is that all 5 ice pads are well used. Probably the Aurora Family Complex arena is the least used of the 5, but still well used. So it's more a matter of tracking to make sure that ice sports remain strong. What we're seeing provincially and what we're seeing nationally is declining participation in ice sports, and it is having a fairly dramatic impact. And as much as your community is growing, part of that growth is an aging of the population. So you'll see in the demographic section that you referred to, the sort of 55 plus age group is dramatically increasing over the time frame of this plan and beyond. As much as we see also the younger age groups growing, we anticipate that we're going to see more in-migration population. So people coming from countries that are where ice sports are not popular or may not even be something that they participate in. So they're coming into your community and it's an activity that they may or may not participate in. So it's more a matter of monitoring that because if it can be well used, yes, keep it, but it will require investment. If it is not well used and is deemed to be surplus, then there are other opportunities that could repurpose that space. No condensation and other elements have impacted that ice pad. And so it just takes more work for your staff to keep it going, but they have done a good job so far.
Right.
Counselor?
Point well taken. Thank you. Also, I like the recommendation in here that the master plan should be reviewed on an annual basis. And so that's the basis of that monitoring that you're talking about. So we're making sure we're building the right things in time for the need. The last thing, and I'll let others take a crack at this, is it appears to me that the trails from a recreational standpoint or from a master plan standpoint are focused on recreational use of trails as opposed to active transportation. My sense is that we should be looking at both of those at the same time, where some of these trails may be able to be repurposed for active transportation to and from GO stations, schools, and other things of that nature. And I didn't see that anywhere in the document, but maybe that wasn't within the scope that you were asked to do. Can you comment on that as well?
Mr. Brown?
Mayor, you have a trails master plan already in place, and I think it sort of looked forward about 50 years. And of course, as with any document, it should be reviewed. So it as a separate document that really guides your sort of your regular trails. My understanding is that you're currently undertaking an active transportation plan that will look at that element. So it kind of ties the two pieces together and will then hopefully dovetail with this. This plan really supports those documents as the guiding documents for trails and for active transportation. So what we wanted to do is make a recommendation to say, yes, they're important. Through the community consultation, we heard how important they were. And so maintaining those documents and updating them regularly will keep you ahead of the curve and make sure you're meeting the needs of the community and connecting your community as much as possible to encourage people to get out and be active.
Okay. Thank you. I'll yield the floor to other people. Get off the soapbox right at the moment. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you very much. I still have a lot to unpack with this large document. I found that the table of contents was rather off in conjunction to where I could find things. So I found myself kind of going back and forth, especially on some key points of interest. So I do look forward to having that meeting. Perhaps maybe a couple of councillors, we can arrange something so we can have a fulsome conversation. You did have a lot of policies, recommendations for update, parkland policies, permanent allocations, and field strategies and such. When you were developing this plan, did you take a look at some of the current policies and strategies that were in place to make that recommendation, or is this just generalized?
Mr. Brown?
Through Mr. Mayor. Yes, we did look at the various policies and also through our discussions with municipal staff and through stakeholder comments. It was identified that there was a need to sort of bring them up to current state so that they are aligned with current thinking and particularly with the allocation policies to make sure that you're allocating your facilities in a way that I guess prioritizes the groups that you feel that should be prioritized. Most communities will prioritize their sort of not-for-profit organizations that are local first. And then when you get sort of to the opposite end of the prioritization, it's more the commercial operators that are the least priority. But, you know, it was really a matter of not so much major revisions, but rather just refinements to make sure that you are allocating in an appropriate manner that maximizes the use of your facilities and maximizes the benefit to your residents. So those various policies that we refer to really are specific to your community. They weren't boilerplate recommendations. In terms of the parkland policies, really there's been a lot of change at the provincial level, especially with Bill 23 affecting the Planning Act. the Development Charges Act and Community Benefits Charges, and those will all have impacts on Parks and Recreation, in particular in terms of how much parkland you might be able to achieve from a development, and how much funds you can attain for your recreation facilities. So it's a matter of taking that into account. We know your official plan is under review at the moment, so likely that will embrace many of those Bill 23 elements. But if not, then it may spur a second review of that document just to make sure it's current and really sets the stage to be realistic. So one example is your official plan talks about a provision level of somewhere between 2 and 3 hectares of parkland per 1,000 residents. In our analysis, we think that at best, you're likely to attain half a hectare to maybe a hectare of parkland per 1,000 residents through development or redevelopment. So your ability to sort of keep up with that the higher end is going to be very, very challenging. So we felt that if we move towards the 2 hectares per 1,000, it was more achievable and it's still within a reasonable range to meet your recreation requirements and comparable to the benchmark communities that we looked at.
Councillor?
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And I think we've learned we need to be a little bit more creative, partnering with some stakeholders or school boards, the region, whatever it is, because we are running out of space. And I think we're kind of discovering that now as we grow. So I do appreciate that. Just through you, Mr. Mayor, just a quick comment about the field strategy plan. We did do one, I believe it was in 2019. And I was kind of excited about it, kind of show us, here's all our fields, soccer, it was an outdoor field strategy. But I kind of felt like it was presented to us like a mahjong of a puzzle that was never really taken apart and put back together. It was just kind of like, here you go. So I'm trying to figure out where do we go from here when we have this field strategy plan and we have the Parks and Rec master plan and we have all these fields that maybe could be, okay, well, maybe we should move these softball or baseball diamonds over here because it makes more sense to put those soccer fields over there. Help me understand how I'm going to use this Parks and Rec master plan with a field strategy plan and put those two together. Is there a piece in the middle there I'm missing, or is there a purview there that I'm missing?
Mr. Brown?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we really saw the two documents as dovetailing. Now, we didn't repeat what the sports field strategy talked about. We really looked at it in terms of it did a detailed analysis in 2019. It came back with a strategy of opportunities to enhance current facilities, identified some locations where sports fields could go, whether they're ball diamonds or soccer fields. My understanding, and if I'm wrong, perhaps staff can clarify or can correct me, but staff are currently reviewing the document to see in terms of what successes or how they have made achievements in implementing that 2019 study, and then reviewing where do we go from here to get to that goal of meeting all of those requirements. It's a pretty substantial undertaking, certainly for the town, when you look at what the Stronach fields provide. And so looking at the potential loss of those in 2025 is a daunting task. And so there may be, and this kind of ties back to that allocation policy element, where one might have to tighten those policies up in order to accommodate as many organizations as possible. And perhaps they're not going to get quite as much time in the interim as they'd like, but at least making sure they get some time until you're able to replace all of those facilities or find a strategy that will work. So even working, like you said, with school boards, other organizations, adjacent municipalities, there's other opportunities to perhaps help adjust with that. But we know it's not an easy task. But really, this plan has recommended review and update that 2019 plan because it, over the last 4 years, it has made some strides forward, but it still has ways to go.
Perfect. Thanks. Thank you. And just quick comment on that. And we are going through our allocation policy right now and doing a review with staff, knowing that we need to update that, which is great. The field strategy plan, again, we just completed. I don't know if you take in consideration when you are doing inventory, if the inventory of said fields or courts are considered usable for the space. I noticed in some of your review, you did speak to, say, for example, the skate park and understanding that it needed a lot of construction. So there might be opportunity there. How far was that taken in respect to, say, other facilities? So for example, as you had mentioned, pickleball is one of those things that's one of the fastest growing sports. And I am so grateful to see in the recommendation to put a 6-court facility because it's needed. But we did receive an email, all of staff and mayor and council did receive an email today as a follow-up to the plan stipulating that there's a lot of existing pickleball courts that we have that aren't used for various reasons and considered in their mind as a pickleballer, a court that they just simply wouldn't play on. So are those factors taken consideration when you're building this plan? Because you are looking at something and say there's 10 soccer fields or, 12 baseball diamonds. Are they considered something that's usable when you're saying there's a demand or not a demand, or where we need to see those improvements? And I know it's a loaded question and it's a lot, but I do think it's important because looking at it on paper may look great that we have all these facilities, but they not actually might be performing and doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yes. So one of the things that we do, so we're not architects or landscape architects, but what we do is when we obtain the inventory from the municipal staff, we go out and look at every single facility and every single park and all of the facilities within those parks, more from a visual inspection to look at the quality of those fields, look at the adjacency. So how close are they to residential areas? Could they have an impact if we recommended lights, for example? So we do look at that. If the town already has facility condition assessments undertaken, and often there are those mostly for indoor facilities, but there may be assessments. So we'll take that information and review it. And we'll also tap your staff's knowledge of the facilities that are indoor as well as outdoor, and let us know what they have heard in the past and what their thoughts are in terms of the quality and their ability to meet the needs. So we do take that into account. And we do recognize that, for example, school facilities tend to be less desirable because, the kids come out at recess or at lunch on a rainy day and they're running around on the grass and putting small divots in. And as a result, when a sports group comes along to play the sport, the quality might not be quite as strong. So we do try to recognize that some fields are less desirable than others. Some have more, some might be smaller size than others, depending on the location within the parks. And so just overall, to answer your question, we try our best to make sure we take into account those variations and the differences in quality. But ultimately, as town staff start to implement the recommendations, they would do a more detailed evaluation.
Counselor?
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I suppose during the winter months, it's tough to do an outdoor assessment because things have changed probably between last year and this year. So I guess we'll speak with staff about that. But it sounds to me that we have a lot to unpack. And it's a snowball effect with many of the policies that you've recommended at the same time. So I do appreciate that. Thanks.
Councilor Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your report. It was a very thorough and interesting read. For me, the overall question that I have is, how do you reconcile all the inputs that you were able to gather? For instance, you talk about, or the report talks about age distribution, cultural distribution, income distribution, and the inefficiencies that come from income. How do you reconcile all those variables to provide a recommendation? Because there's so many competing interests, and as decisions that we have to make, there are competing interests, and you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, because every decision you make with the scarce resources we have in the short term could be a great decision, but 5-10 years down the road could be the wrong decision. So how do you reconcile all the variables that you put into the report?
Mr. Brown?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So that is the challenge with the master plan is looking at all of those variables and understanding what they could mean. And so when we look at recommendations, we don't look at recommendations in terms of short-term, I guess addressing a short-term blip. We look really at the long term. So as much as there's recommendations that are, build a new playground or look at the skateboard park and do that in the short term, those are because we think that not only is that a need now, but it's a need in the long term. So you're making, sustainable investment that will be needed in that long term. But, we look at the socio-demographics of your community, look at trends and best practices. We talk to as many people as we possibly can within your community and try to get as much input. We look at utilization data and participation data that is, solid information. So we know how many hours are being used at soccer fields, at ball diamonds and arenas and things of that nature. And really our experience allows us to pull that all together. So we've undertaken over 400 Parks and Recreation plans. So we have a lot of experience to bring to your community. And in fact, we've worked with your community for many years in the past as well. So we do have a good, strong knowledge of where you've been and you've made great strides forward. And this plan is really, as a 5-year plan, is moving you forward in the next 5 years to say, here's what your priorities are. And these priorities, if you address them, will meet your needs in the longer term as well.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I'm sure we're going to have, I did not know that we would have more time, smaller setting, but I look forward to that. I think one observation I had was that Frisbee golf was number one in terms of what was discussed, but I didn't see that in the outdoor field activity recommendation. So there seems to be a disconnect there. Through you, Mr. Mayor, can I ask why Frisbee golf was not in the recommendation when it was one of the higher inputs?
I believe it was, and I just want to
Was
make
it?
sure I
Okay,
get
sorry,
to the right
missed
section,
it.
so I'm not misleading you on this recommendation. But sorry,
You don't have to look at it if
Okay.
if others have indicated that it's there, then
Yeah.
I
So-
just missed it.
yeah, and certainly we recognize that it is a growing interest activity. We particularly saw growth during the COVID-19 timeframe where people were outdoors and looking for new opportunities. So we are recommending that you look at putting in ideally in partnership or on a private person's land, facilitating a disc golf type of venue within your community, or potentially working with surrounding communities so that you're not duplicating a resource. So it may be working with an adjacent community to provide that experience for the residents.
Councillor?
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for coming this evening. What struck me, one of the main things that struck me about this report, example, recommendation 11, seek opportunities to establish a 2-quarter tennis complex. 13, the same thing, establish a pickleball complex. We are doing 14 to try and figure out in the interim what we can do. Thanks to the motion from Councillor Gilliland and Weiss. 16, seek to expand the supply of basketball and multi-use courts. We don't have the land to do that. And I mean, is that something that you've observed, that you've found some land that we can use to do this expansion?
Brown?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So really the what we're trying to do is make sure that we have availability of facilities or opportunities to recreate for all age groups. And we know that, the teenage age group in particular, but certainly people in their young, say early 20s tend to be most interested in basketball. Of course, any one of us could participate in a casual basis, but it's really trying to provide those opportunities. And it may be, working through partnerships with school boards. But we also see where you're having areas of intensification, so intensified development. We would anticipate that you're going to see young people living in those areas. And it's a matter of trying to work with the development community, perhaps, to achieve some of these elements, such as basketball courts or even basketball net to shoot basketball at. But it is an important element. We know that as the Raptors have done well, there has been a growing demand. We just went through March Madness, and we know that was an extremely popular spectator sport for people to get excited about basketball. And so we're really trying to, again, I guess, come back to that we're looking at all age groups and all abilities and making sure that there's opportunities so that really kids are active. And it's important physically, socially, and mentally that they have things to do. And basketball, action wheeled sports, soccer ball, hockey, all of those things do keep them busy. There are those, though, that are looking for things beyond that. So beyond traditional sports. So I know that's maybe getting beyond your question, but it is certainly going to be a challenge for you as a community to find those locations that can accommodate some of these facilities, particularly in areas of intensification. But I think that what you'll find is if you work with the development community, you look at parkland dedication that they would be required to provide, that there will be opportunities to provide them, perhaps at a smaller scale.
Councillor?
Thank you. I don't disagree with anything you've said, but we've been looking for land, places to do these things for, I don't know how many years, a lot of years. In the past, we haven't been able to do much with the development community. Perhaps optimistically, we can say that we'll do it in the future. But I would say with the intensification that's required from the province, we're in a bit of a bind with that. With respect to recommendation 20, it says remove bike park from Hickson, explore a pump track or bicycle playground. Is the meaning that if we remove the bike park from Hickson now, that we could then put another kind of a bike park in that area, or are we going to have to find some new land for the recommendation?
Mr. Brown?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the idea here is really trying to assess how well utilized that facility is. Right. So it's really observing, is it well used? And if so, then maintain it as it is and upgrade it as necessary over time. It's really a matter of, if it is not well used, that there is an opportunity to look at something like a pump, bike pump. Sorry, I'm getting confused with my wording. A pump track, which is becoming very popular. It could require additional space, but there are different models and different ways that one can lay those out in different scales. One can go with a sort of a community level versus regional level one, which would be smaller and provide opportunities. So it was really to say, let's understand how well utilized what we have is, how well utilized it is. If it's utilized, then let's keep it. If not, then let's look at other opportunities, and perhaps a pump track would be one of those options that could be considered.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I took that understanding. Thank you. I was just trying to figure out where we would put it. With respect to 23 in bold, it says it's for playgrounds. It says 500-meter service radius. Is that a larger service radius than we have now?
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, so right now you have, I believe, 800-meter radius for your parks. And so it's really looking at more walkability. And even at 500 meters, you really don't have a lot of gaps that would need to be addressed, other than in your areas of intensification, where you would see a lot more people and likely a lot more kids within those areas. I know historically people will think, in a more built up area that, high-rise condos or things of that nature, you're more likely to get sort of your early 20s, first house out in a condo, or perhaps people getting towards retirement. What we're seeing in communities that are well into their intensification is they're getting a lot of young kids and a lot of young families moving into those areas. And so the demand for activities for all age groups is important. So when we look at those recommendations, that's really what we're thinking about, is trying to make sure that there's walkable opportunities where people may not have access to a private vehicle to get around.
Thank you. Thank you through Mr. Mayor. So in the intense areas, it should be even less than 500 because of the amount of population. Is that, did I take that meaning correctly?
Mr. Brown?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It could be less than 500 meters. It's more a matter of scale. So if you're able to acquire a large enough piece of land within an area of intensification, it may be that you can build a larger playground that could accommodate all of the people that live within that 500 meters. If not, if it's a smaller parcel and you are left building a smaller playground, then it may be that you would look at more playgrounds within those areas in particular.
Counselor?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I like the idea, Mr. Mayor, like the idea of a third fitness park. The volunteer-led rigs, do you have experience with this? Because we do have one in town, at least one, and it does have some problems. Are you familiar with volunteer-led rinks?
Mr. Brown?
Rinks and certainly, I would say quite a number of communities have had a challenge with really getting the volunteers out. It has been difficult, especially in the last 3 years. It has had an impact. So it does sort of, I believe you have two that are volunteer run. The rest are town operated natural ice pads. What we've recommended is undertaking a business plan to look at an artificial ice pad that would really give people an opportunity right through the entire winter season. I think part of the challenge with volunteerism is just the frustration of our winters lately, in that they just get the ice frozen and usable for a day or two, and then it warms up and is not usable, and they're back out there again. So it is hard to keep those volunteers motivated, especially for facilities like that with our changing weather patterns.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did like very much your comment about prioritizing conveyance of parkland instead of cash in lieu. And also your comment about the David Tomlinson Nature Reserve. It's not park. It's considered open space. There's, I think, some misunderstanding about that, because I think we were calling it a park to begin with. Barrier-free washrooms in appropriate park types. What would be the appropriate park type?
Brown?
That's true, Mr. Mayor. Typically, they're the higher order parks. So your
Okay.
community level parks, town level parks that you'll be looking at. There's always a request and always a demand for, I guess we've offered and referred to them as comfort amenities, but park benches, washrooms, and things of that nature. A lot of it has to also do with the aging of your population. So
Right.
as people get older, they have lesser ability to get home in time. So it's part of that is looking at making sure there's opportunities, particularly in your larger parks where there's a lot of things going on, and the ability to provide and maintain those.
Counselor,
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor, and following on that, you said promote usage for all ages. And in all of the parks, the larger ones and the smaller ones, what was said, shade and seating and unprogrammed spaces, places where seniors can just, hang out. But the shade is very important. And will become more so important in all of our parks. You did discuss at length Bill 23. I'm not sure I understand. With that's not going to, you would like us, and I agree, to increase the number of hectares we have per 1,000 residents, but won't Bill 23 make that extremely difficult?
Brown,
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so it definitely will make it much more difficult. Bill 23 really, I guess, opened the door for developers to potentially dedicate lands that would not be typical parklands in the past that you would accept as parkland. So it's a matter of really waiting for regulations. I would assume that the province will come out with regulations to really identify what is a suitable parcel of land for dedication. But in terms of flat tableland parks, you will likely get much less of that. And so it's a matter of looking at alternative ways of acquiring parkland. Certainly outright purchase through tax dollars is one method. Working with partnerships, looking at trading land that may be suitable for development versus a parcel of land that may be suitable for recreation. So there's a number of different ways we've identified in the plan that could be looked at, but certainly it will be a challenge moving forward to meet parkland requirements and certainly to achieve the level of dedication that or the target that is identified in your official plan.
Thank you very
Counselor.
much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm finished.
thank you. Counselor Gilliland, second time.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. Is it, so your last name is not Mr. Brown, but it is Mr. Brown. Okay, sorry. It is correct. Okay, question about facilities. I know that's something that's been a concern, and I did read in the report here that 87% of the respondents identified washrooms as a high priority, ranking first out of 30 facility types, which is it's a pretty staggering number. But yet it does say here the town can't offer these in all parks, but should continue only consider them in community parks. So I don't know how we're going to satisfy the demand if we're really only going to be dialing it into a community park. And could you just define a community park versus, say, a neighborhood park, or what that means?
Mr. Brown,
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so a community park is really a larger has a larger land area associated with it. I'm just trying to find the section on that. So community parks are generally 4 to 8 hectares in size, where a neighborhood park is about 1.5 to 4 hectares in size. So when you get into your larger parks, we think that that's sort of your first area of focus for washrooms, and because there's a lot more land, a lot more activity taking place, and whether there's organized sports or whether it's for more passive play or picnicking or throwing a frisbee around, a lot more people within those locations looking for convenience and the comfort amenities like washrooms and shade and so forth. So it's really to start there and get your community parks with washrooms, and then perhaps longer term, you may want to look at some other locations strategically. We know that often there's a concern about vandalism. There's a concern about maintenance and upkeep of those facilities, and do you lock them at certain hours of the evening and so forth. So it's a big issue, but we are seeing it driven largely by older adults, but also people with families with young children who are looking for convenience and not having to sort of run behind a tree and so forth. And, we know that happens, but it's not ideal. So it's really, when we're looking at parks, I think it's what we want to make sure is that we're not only focused on the soccer fields, the ball diamonds, the playgrounds, that we're recognizing that people are using parks for a lot of other purposes, and those are social and mental health elements as well as recreational.
Counselor?
Thank you. No, I appreciate that because I know that has been, I guess, a bone of contention for some people in the neighborhood to where people come from all over the place to come to specific parks in Aurora, but for that reason, for mental health, picnicking, playing with their kids, may not necessarily be people who live in the neighborhood who are just walking down the street to go home. And it's more or less trying to prioritize, okay, how are we identifying when we see a park has this high use and how that cost, like it makes sense to make that huge investment. And I didn't know if that was some part of your assessment here to say this park here would be recommended that there be a bathroom because it has the potential to have a lot more high community use or whatever that bucket is. Is that something that, you would have put in your analysts, or no, you were just more or less specifically asking the community whether or not we needed more washrooms?
Brown?
So our question in the survey was asking people what they would like to see in washrooms was one of the answers that they could have checked off. But the fact that it came up, quite high suggests that there is a strong demand for that or interest in council looking at those opportunities. I actually remember this coming up with this council. I'm not sure if it was all of the current members, probably about 10 years ago, perhaps, where there was a park and it was a smaller parcel and there was a request for washroom in it. And so it was really looking at, well, who are we trying to serve with this neighborhood park? And so when we do our analysis, we do look at that and sort of say, when we're looking at community level parks, that is really to serve the entire community. So we are expecting that people from right across the town will come and utilize that park. And as a result, there is a higher expectation of what amenities will be there, washrooms included.
Counselor?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, we certainly have the Wonderland Park in Ward 2, and we certainly have the best tobogganing hill in Aurora in Ward 2. So I'm hoping I can convince my council members here that we need a bathroom there because we do attract the entire community to that area and beyond. So I appreciate that analysis. One last question. I know that you had a section here on outdoor fitness parks. And again, you identified that there was two, although they were completely different concepts. One was equipment that was meandering throughout a trail system, which I know for a fact, because I've seen them, they're beyond being able to be used because it's just not usable in my opinion, or a lot of maintenance and they don't work properly. So I don't know if I even constitute as something that we currently have. And then the other one was another meandering one within another park, but nothing really specifically to an outdoor fitness park that's all in one in a playground kind of scenario. I know you mentioned it. And it was something that you recommended that we could put, but you didn't really say anything beyond that. And I was just wondering if you had any additional comments to that. I did mention that it was something that was during the pandemic, a lot of people took to fitness for mental health and being outdoors. It was a safe environment and it's affordable. I just wanted to know if you had any more context to that, because again, like we were comparing what we currently have in our stock, and I just felt like there were two totally different models and kind of an unfair comparison.
Mr. Brown?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So draft recommendation 25 talks to evaluating the potential of a third outdoor fitness opportunity, and really trying to look at it more from a concentrating it in one location as opposed to putting it along a trail. We find that as much as historically there was sort of participation parks many years ago, which, as you walked along a trail, there would be things to do. So in many communities, those fitness elements were introduced in more recent times along a trail. We're finding that if we group them together in one location, perhaps associated with a playground, so that the kids will be in the playground, the adults will be using the fitness equipment, that we think that is a good opportunity. And so we have recommended that you evaluate a location for that to take place.
Counselor?
Great, thank you. And then I'll talk with you probably offline about dog parks. You did do a very good summary there. It's kind of what I expected to hear. But I'll probably talk to you more offline about that. Thanks.
Thank you. Counselor Gallo, second.
Thank you. Just quickly, I just want to take umbrage with Councillor Gilliland suggesting that the behind the Aurora Family Leisure Complex is not the best place to ride your sled in Ward 5. I think she misspoke there, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Brown, thanks very much. I think it's the draft plan is a good plan. Obviously, I think there needs to be some tweaks and but I think some of the key priorities for our town, including enhancing the quality of our existing parks, recreational facilities, increasing access to green spaces, and promoting a healthy and active lifestyles are all in there, and also addressing demographic changes in our town, our aging population and increase in number of families within children and our growing diversity. I think it's all been mentioned in there, and looking at how do we move forward in doing all that. And as far as the short supply of land, I think it's vitally important that when we do look at, as you mentioned, work with the school boards in certain instances. In this case, I think when it comes from a land perspective, when there's lands that are sitting for a while and they come up to surplus, that we need to act on that, and we need to look at the possibility of picking up those lands. There's two that could possibly become, where there's one, the old George Street Public School, as well as G.W. Williams, the old one once it moves. And those are lands that would be, I think, vitally important for our town to pick up and be able to have them, fall into our portfolio when it comes to Parks and Rec. And so I think it's something that we as a town need to continue to look at. And when those opportunities exist, that we jump on those chances, because it would only improve our Parks and Rec within our community. And so I thank you for that. And then also on top of that, I would say, not only everyone sitting at this table and our staff, but all Aurorans should reach out, put in their comments, because this is an ongoing process until June when that final plan comes. And is it, Mr. Duga, did you want?
I just want to clarify, I need their comments by May 3rd. So
By
yes,
May
the
3rd.
report
Okay, so
is
we
in
need
June.
those.
Just
Okay, so we
clarify.
need those comments by May 3rd, but I would encourage all Aurorans to get out and make those comments available. So that way we have a final plan that works for all of us. So, and I know we'll get the job done. So thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Council. And I look forward to that final plan. Council, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next, we have 9.2 draft plan condominium Wellington Aurora Developments Inc. 497 Wellington Street. Recommendations that report number PDS 23-035 be received, and 2, that the draft plan of condominium common elements condominium file number CDM 2017-03 to establish a condominium road to service 11 parcels of tied land, each containing a single detached residential dwelling, be approved subject to the conditions attached hereto as Schedule A of this report. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Weiss, second by Councillor Gallo. Any comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 9.3, extension of approval to draft plan of condominium Dormlind Development Limited 14029 Yonge Street. Recommendations that report number PDS 23-036 be received, and 2, that the approval to draft plan of condominium and related conditions of approval at 14029 Yonge Street file CDM 2017-01 be extended for 1 year with a lapsing date of May 28, 2024. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Weiss, Councillor Gilliland, any comments or questions on this item? Councillor Gallo.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to Mr. Ramon, if you could just quickly go through the rationale for this.
Mr. Ramono.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, when the draft plan of condominium was approved a number of years ago, there was an inclusion of a lapsing provision that is typically attached to plans of subdivision. So it's a 3-year lapsing provision. The 27 homes are under construction. The lapsing provision speaks to the plan being registered within that 3-year period. And so they need a couple more months to work towards registering the condominium.
Councillor.
So it's a result of a delay, through you, Mr. Mayor, delayed construction, probably COVID related as well.
Through you,
Mr.
Mr. Mayor,
Riddle?
that's correct. Sorry, I didn't add that. Yeah, they like most builders and developers, they've experienced delays over the last couple of years.
Okay, Counselor, that's fine. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that carries. 9.4, request for increased capital budget authority for capital project number 31113, infrastructure rehabilitation on Murray Drive. Recommendations that report number PDS 23-017 be received. 2, that the total approved budget authority for capital project number 31113 be increased to $6,177,800, representing an increase of $655,508. And 3, that the remaining $396,740 in additional requested budget authority for project number 31113 be funded from the Stormwater Reserve. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Gilliland, second. Councillor Weiss, any comments, questions on this one? Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. I'm okay with it. I'm just questioning one of the funding. I think it's 3. So we're taking some, I guess, excess funds from some projects. One of them is 3113, I believe. Sorry, 31202. And it was actually in our 2023 budget as previously approved capital budgets with no change or reduction to budget. So it's we're saying we're taking, I can't remember the amount, whatever the amount is out of that. But in the 2023 budget, it stated that the 1.788 million for Haida Drive and Wyndham and various others, that there's no change, reduction to budget. If someone could just speak to that.
So, Mr. Moore, did you want to answer that, or did you want me to introduce Ms. Fleming, Nancy Fleming, our new, maybe I can put it this way, our new ANCA, so everyone understands her position. So, Nancy, yeah, if you wanted to answer that, that'd be great. We'll get you involved right away.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gallo. The funding is from our Roads Reserve Fund, so monies that were remaining after some roads reconstruction work that we had done in 2022 that we're now funneling through to fund this project.
Councillor?
Through you, I understood that. The question is, in our 2023 budget, that particular project was listed under the previously approved capital projects with no change or reduction to budget. So clearly there was a change or reduction to budget because there was a surplus in that particular account that we're helping to fund this project.
Okay. Nancy, I'm going to put you on hold for a second because I think Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel wants to provide an answer from our finance department. Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, go ahead.
Hi, through you, Mr. Mayor. So these projects are all part of the roads rehab and replacement program. So with these projects, there's the budget has not actually changed, but we found that we do have excess budget within those projects that we can reallocate to this project. So what that means is instead of pulling the entire amount from the reserve and drawing further amounts from the reserve, we're able to reallocate within the program. And that's part of what the capital programs for asset management projects was set up for, so that if we do have some excess funds, we can reallocate them.
Councillor?
I'm clear on that. I'll try, maybe it's me. I'll try one third time. In our 2023 binders under asset management capital, perhaps this particular project 31202, which we're drawing some money out to fund this, shouldn't be under the previously approved capital projects with no change or reduction to budget. That's all I'm saying. It's in there, but clearly there is a reduction. And maybe between budget and now we finish that project and we determine that there is excess funds, and maybe that's the rationale for it. All I'm saying is I'm trying to make a connection between telling us at budget that there's no change to this and a report tonight saying we got some extra money.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So typical for some of these engineering projects, we do wait to close out the project until we're sure that everything is complete and all the any future procurements are done, if there's any warranty items or anything that comes after the project. So at this stage, we are now certain that we could reallocate the funds. We generally wait a little bit longer on these because they are significant projects and there can be additional costs that come down later.
Councillor.
Thank you. And that's okay, as long as this project is clear and we're confident that those funds are there and we don't have, any issues between when we produce this budget for us to this report tonight. There's excess funds, great, we reallocate. That's appropriate.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't notice that. Thank you. With respect to the funding from the stormwater reserve, I know that we're trying to build that reserve up. So taking money out of it is certainly contrary to the intent. Maybe that's the only place the money could come from. But if you wouldn't mind commenting on it, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So when we're funding these projects, we have to pull them from the appropriate source because of the significant amount of stormwater work that's required for this project. It is the appropriate source for this additional funding. This project actually has many different types of funding, including water reserve, roads reserve, and there was, for some of the preliminary works, some gas tax reserve that was used as well. So for this partial portion of it, yes, it is stormwater. We are trying to build up the reserve, but that's going to be a bit of a longer term strategy as we work for it in the future years.
No, sir.
Thank you. That makes sense, but I don't think it was anticipated that we would be using the reserve for current projects, but for future ones. Just a general comment, Mr. Mayor. The residents in Ward 3 are getting pretty tired. They had all that construction on Henderson. Now they've got it on Yonge. I know those are regional projects, but now one on Murray, they're going to be so unhappy. Is there any way that we can try and coordinate the regional projects with ours? Especially that one on Yonge Street. The one on Henderson was way behind schedule. So that was not foreseen. And the one under the bridge went way longer. But is there any way that we can try and schedule these things? Because it's a lot for the residents in the area, and not only the wards, not only my ward, but Mr. Weiss's ward. And it's just a lot of construction to cope with all at once or in a short period of time. Do you have an answer for me, Mr. Mayor, or a suggestion?
No, what I can suggest is that that the region and our staff always coordinate and try to work on timing as far as projects that are regional, projects that are at the local level, to make sure that they don't essentially interfere with each other or cause a logjam in certain areas. But at the end of the day, our infrastructure, if it needs to get done, it needs to get done, because if we didn't do it, we would have a bigger problem in your wards and a bigger problem for our residents. And so I think ultimately I think staff do their best to coordinate those efforts. I can relay that message to regional staff as well, and to regional council, as far as ensuring that we try to do, a better job, of trying to coordinate these. But as you mentioned as well in your comments, that sometimes there's other outside factors that come into play, that just it doesn't matter how well we time these projects, that things come up and cause delays in certain projects, which then cause a crossover from the local level to the regional level.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was a good follow-up to my question. So I will take this opportunity to the residents in Ward 3 to apologize for all this disruption in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Weiss.
Thank you. In looking through this, I have no problems with what is being proposed, because it's basically just, again, inflation and supply chain problems. But when I looked at the link to the strategic plan, I'm not sure where it says, and maybe we ought to be thinking about this all the time, but when we're doing resurfacing and changing of our roadways, maybe the active transportation ought to be considered as a link to the strategic plan for a bike lane, for curb radiuses and a number of things like that. So I don't know where that belongs, but I suggest maybe Mr. Ramuno may have a comment about that.
Sure, Mr. Weiss, Councilor Weiss, and I'll, before I let Mr. Ramuno, I know that we did implement complete streets as part of our OP previous last term, looking at any reconstruction that staff look at that as part of that reconstruction and see if it is possible to add those components within there to create that complete street. But Mr. Ramuno, did you?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, that's a good point. And as you know, we'll be releasing our first draft of our active transportation plan soon. And it's something that we can look towards, including the relevant comments in our future reports, whether it's under the climate change consideration or our link to strategic plan. It's something we'll take under consideration, most definitely.
And Councilor, I'll send you a link to that motion that we did. I think it was it was either 2017 or it was just after into the last term. It might have been the term before at the end, or it was just at the beginning of last term. So, but I'll send you that link so you can have a read as well.
I was just a child back in those days, so I
Oh,
apologize, but I'd like to make sure that whenever we're talking about road rehabilitations and all the rest of it, that it's there. And I thank Mr. Ramuno for putting that in this, even though it didn't appear in the link. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Gallo, second time.
Thank you. And maybe slightly off topic, or maybe it isn't. We have quite a few projects that are previously funded. We approved some capital projects. Does anyone know whether we can anticipate, because this is not the first one we've seen, because of the environment that we were in. Is there anyone tracking these, and will we be getting these on a regular basis on the council agenda? And if so, is there some type of strategy that we're implementing that obviously we didn't foresee a lot of the costs that would have come down the pipe, especially previously approved capital projects?
Nancy, did you want to answer that? Sure, go ahead. And then if our CAO wants to add into that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gallo. Yes, we have looked at through our capital budget process. We have seen larger costs associated with design and construction projects since COVID. So we've been making that adjustment to our capital budgeting for the 2023 capital budget process and through our construction projects. In addition, we are taking extra care when preparing our terms of reference for RFPs and RFTs to ensure our scopes of work look at only addressing what we need with our current budget envelope.
Councilor?
So going forward, that's great. My concern is the previously approved budgets that, and some go maybe a year or two, that we're going to kind of get to this stage on a frequent basis. That's my concern, whether or not anyone's looked at that to give us a heads up that this is not the only one and it isn't the first one, and there may be more coming up.
Ms. Guerra Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So part of why we're now doing the interim reporting on our forecast, which also includes capital, is helping us track this better to understand what the costs are in our capital projects. We're also looking at our capital programs first. So if there are slight overages or underages on some projects and we can manage them within our program, then that helps us move forward with our business. Anytime we have a growth project, we're coming to council should there be any impact on projects. But the interim reporting is going to be a useful tool for council to be able to see how we're progressing towards projects.
Councilor?
Okay.
Thank you. Seeing any other comments or questions, call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed, that carries. 9.5, application for third-party event in an outdoor town facility, Aurorapalooza. Recommendations that report number CMS 23-011 be received and that staff be directed to review and approve or deny the Aurorapalooza application in accordance with the third-party events an outdoor town facilities policy, and 3, that if the Aurorapalooza third-party event is approved, that it be designated an event of town significance for the purposes of attaining special occasion permits in accordance with the municipal alcohol policy, and 4, that the delegated authority be granted to the Director of Community Services to review and approve or deny the Aurorapalooza applications in future years. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Gilliland, second by Councillor Weiss. Any comments or questions? Councillor Weiss.
Thank you. And I live close by, so I've been to the event. And it says here that the events were well managed without incident, and I appreciate that. But do we keep track of actual attendance, and do we get kind of a report from these things to identify what the impact is of the money that's being spent to support these events and that type of thing? What kind of metrics are being collected, if any?
Ms. McDougall.
Through Mr. Mayor, there isn't a typical report out requirement. It is a private event. However, it's information and data we could collect from the operator without an issue. I'm sure you'd be happy to provide that. It isn't something we typically do when it's a private rental.
Councillor.
Okay, I just think it's a part of our metrics that we should be gathering some information and asking them to do that on behalf of the rest of the community, and because we're approving these things, and I just think we need to have some quantitative information, and it should be easy to get. So thank you.
Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. The recommendation speaks to in the future delegated authority, so we wouldn't be getting these anymore if this is approved. And I'm just wouldn't mind getting a sense of why that's there. Is this an onerous report? Is there something that staff doesn't feel should come to council?
Ms. McDougall. I'm assuming this is just specifically to this event, not
Yes,
to
it
any
is.
other event. Okay.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. This is only applicable to the Aurorapalooza event. In light of this being their 4th year request, and the 3 previous years have been completed successfully, it was just ultimately a suggestion that this be something could be delegated. Obviously, under the same understanding of review and evaluation of staff year over year. If something changes, we'd be coming back to council. But if it continues to be a successful event, it was just an opportunity for us to have that delegated authority so that it does remove the necessity to come to council. But if that's not council's wish, we could remove that. But that's just our consideration, knowing we've had 3 successful years.
Council.
Yeah, it's just me. I like seeing these things. I like to have that input. It doesn't seem to be an onerous report, so my preference is for it to continue to come to council. Otherwise, we're going to sit here and we're going to end up doing nothing. If we keep giving delegated authority.
Any other, Councillor Gardner?
It's a comment, Mr. Mayor. The people who live around the town park area have, because it's the town park, have a lot of events going on. And I think it would be worthwhile to judge whether an event is successful enough, whatever that would be, to infringe on the privacy of the residents of the area. I'm not sure I'm saying that correctly. Perhaps Councillor Weiss knows what I mean. But everybody would like to use the town park, but I don't think that it should be given to everybody, because it is in a way an intrusion on the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Let's go on.
Thank you. Just a quick comment in relation to the delegated authority. Seeing as it's happened successfully for the last 3 years, I do feel comfortable with that specifically. Although, having said that, what Councillor Weiss's suggestion about the metrics and knowing that it is successful, I think having that in tandem and knowing that, we could at least get some report back on the success of it and that there hasn't been any issues or anything moving forward. It kind of gives us kind of an idea of, how the event has been performing. Then, I think that would supplement that, and that'd be totally fine.
Yep. Any other comments or questions? You want me to split it? Just leave it? All right. All right, wait for council. Okay. Councilor Weiss?
Councillor Gartner, for the acknowledgement of there's a lot of things going on at Town Park, and there are some people in Town Park area that, and the Ratepayers Association that dislike the disruption, but again, that's what Town Park is for, and I believe that it's the right place to put many things, and there are just as many people, I think, in Town Park, I may get some emails tomorrow about it, that actually enjoy the robust nature of what goes on there, and frankly, instead of a not in my backyard, I'm one of those yes in my backyards. So I think it's an important part of our promenade area. It's important for the development of our community, and this is just a good event. So I want to thank you for acknowledging the Town Park area and the residents there. But it's an important part of our community. So I think it's the right place. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor, for being a YIMBY, not an NIMBY. Any other comments or questions? Call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 9.6, reconstruction of engineered walkway on Crawford Rose Drive. Recommendations that report number OPS 23-004 be received. 2, that the condition on the approval of total of 175,000 capital budget authority for capital project number 34015, engineered walkway reconstruction, Moffett Crescent to Valley Drive plus Crawford Rose be lifted and the project proceed. 3, that the current contract value of 650,000 for Vaughan Paving Limited for restoration and repairs of engineered walkways be increased by 175,000 to a total contract value of 825,000 excluding taxes. And 4, that staff takes steps to remove any unauthorized structures, fills, obstructions, objects, and other items from town easements and town property to enable the walkway reconstruction project work between Crawford Rose Drive and Devons Drive. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Gilliland, second, Councillor Gallo. Any comments, questions, Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor and Mr. Ramuno. I guess it would be your department, or maybe it's no. Colangelo, did I say that right? Perfect. To get used to that. In respect to the obstructions and the fills and such, I'm just a little concerned as far as like the property owners. Have they been notified what those risks are? I mean, obviously the fence is encroaching and falling over. I don't know if it was because the homeowner had done the fill, if it was kind of done that way when they bought it. And, you know, help me give some context here. I don't want anybody's surprises. I don't want to get these phone calls saying like, what's going on? This is how it was when the town built it. Please give me some context here.
Angelo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. To date.
Your mic, Luigi?
Sorry.
Thank you.
We haven't made any contact with the homeowner, and we don't know if this structure was built with this current homeowner or the previous homeowner. But when council put a hold on the project, this is why the report is here. We will approach the homeowner and see what we can, if we can come up to some sort of agreement.
Councillor?
Okay, I'm very hesitant to be approving just an inadvertent authorization just to start removing things without some sort of mediation, for lack of a better term, because I don't know what was there first or how it was. I know there's a fence on one side that looks like it's falling over. Obviously, that needs to be done. It looks like on the other side as well, there's some rather mature cedars that I don't know if that means that they've got to be removed. And I certainly wouldn't want to be approving, hey, yeah, let's go ahead with this. Meanwhile, someone might lose their entire privacy cedar hedge. On the other side, they may might have to do their entire grading. I just don't know what that looks like. I just need some comfort in knowing that there's going to be some collaboration there and this is not going to fall on the property owner.
Mr. Colangelo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The cedar hedges, I'm sure we can reconstruct the walkway without damaging them. There's no guarantee that we won't damage roots. We've already done 5 previous reconstructed walkways where their cedar hedges were present, and we managed to rebuild them without taking them out. The retaining wall unfortunately was built within a 1.5 meter easement. And it's leaning right up against the fence. I'm sure we can still reconstruct the walkway, but the fence would always be an issue and will continue to be an issue because the retaining wall was built with 6x6 timbers.
Counselor?
Thank you. Okay, I feel like I need to do a site visit to kind of understand, and I'm sure going to get the phone call from a resident there, and I want to make sure that we're all on the same page and kind of understand what the rules of engagement are. Is there cost sharing that's going to happen there between the town and the resident as far as the retaining wall or the grading? I just can't see from the photos what exactly it means that could be removed and have to be done and whose responsibility is what.
Mr. Colangelo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the fence is pretty much property line. The retaining wall was built tight up against the fence. The town does have an easement in its favor of 1.5. I don't believe there's any cost sharing in our bid to get this project approved. And we, like I said, we haven't approached the homeowner yet.
Counselor?
Okay, I understand for legal purposes that we have the right of way, so I do get that. I guess my question is, based on your assessment, the fence would probably most likely have to be removed and replaced based on the way it looks. And is that something the town will be doing?
Mr. Colangelo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. I should add that the original grading plan for the subdivision, there was no retaining wall built.
Counselor?
That's important information to know. So once they remove, they're probably going to end up removing the retaining wall to do the work. And at some point, it'll just be kind of put back together in a way that makes sense. I'm just assuming that's the way it's going to be finished. It's not like you're ripping away the retaining wall, leaving a bunch of soil there that's unamended. You might throw on some grass seed. I'm just trying to understand. So I just want to mitigate the situation.
Mr. Colangelo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, that's going to be tough to remove the retaining wall. Because it would just be land. There's nothing supporting it because it's built quite high. So if another retaining wall is going to be built, it has to be built a little bit further back, and operations won't have an issue with that. The problem here is that the retaining wall, with the height of it, is leaning up against the fence.
Okay,
perfect.
So the town will be doing that part then.
Mr. Colangelo?
The town will be, through you, Mr. Mayor, the town will be repairing the fence, yes.
And the retaining wall, if they're removing it and pushing it back, like you're saying that, it sounds like to me like you have to move the retaining wall, no?
Mr. Colangelo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. In order to fix the fence, the retaining wall has to be removed.
Moved. Right, and you'll
Elsa?
be putting it back. Okay. That's all I need to know. I just want to make sure I can continue this conversation offline. I'm sorry, going back and forth. It just kind of caught me off guard tonight. Thanks.
Counselor Weiss?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. You have a paragraph in here that says these retaining walls and fences are the most common problem at every engineered walkway. And I can tell you that I've had numerous discussions, and frankly, the residents are worried about it because they're worried about safety of people walking through during the walkway. And they're surprised to find out that the removal of the retaining wall is going to be at their expense too. So I understand where Councillor Gilliland is getting this. And when I talk to them, they're completely confused about what this means and the right of way and the 1.5 meters. And I wonder if there's a way to help prevent these in the future and to get information to people, particularly those who are along the walkways and through the subdivisions, because it's going to happen more and more often as these fences and retaining walls start to have these conflicts. So it's just a comment about communication, and I agree with what was said here about you got to let people know that this is happening to them. So from a communication standpoint, I think we can do a little bit better in identifying what their rights and their obligations are around these easements. Thank you.
Mr. Gallo?
Thank you. I just want to be clear about the retaining wall. Clearly, we're going to be replacing the fence. We're not going to replace the fence if that retaining wall is still there. That doesn't make any sense because we haven't fixed the problem. So that retaining wall is going to be removed. What I'm unclear of is what's going to go in place of the retaining wall, because you can't just dig that up and leave it as it is because the grading is so high. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Colangelo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. If council wishes for the town to do it, I'd have to get a price. I'm not sure. It's not just a 10-foot length retaining wall. It's about 50, 60 feet, if not longer.
Counselor?
I'm not interested in the town doing it, and I'm sure the residents won't want to hear this, but if the current owner did it, they should have known they couldn't. If they bought the house, and there's a lot of value in getting a professional inspector to give you a sense of what the status of the home is and what the conditions of the home is. But ultimately, to me, they are responsible for that. So the current bid as we stand is to replace that fence, concrete. How are we going to deal with removing that wall? And still unclear to me how we're going to resolve this.
Mr. Colangelo?
On BGen. Our plan is to have a conversation with the resident first about having that retaining wall removed and pushed further back.
Okay. Leave it up to you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Colangelo, I just got two questions. I just expand a little bit on. I mean, obviously, I agree with Councilor Gallo's comments. If the wall was built properly, they would have needed a permit, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I did speak with the building department, and according to the building department, it would not have required a permit because of the height.
Okay. Shorter than 2 feet? Shorter than 2 feet, that's why? 1 meter. Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Notice of motion, end of the month, regional report. Someone like to move receiving that for information? Councilor Gallo. Councilor Weiss, any comments or questions on the regional report? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. New business. Councilor Kim. Councilor Gallo. Councilor Gillen.
Thank you. Through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Ramuno. I was hoping that maybe you could shed some light on the sewer connection the delegate had brought forward on Edward Street. I am a little confused why it's very well-established area. Is there a way that we can satisfy this connection in a much more cost-effective manner for the single dwelling?
Mr. Ramuno.
Through Mr. Mayor, if I can ask Nancy Fleming, our manager, to come to the podium. She has a background and some history with respect to the chronology of events from the start of when the applicant came in. The lands, as we heard, were severed to create an additional lot fronting onto Edward Street. So it's the first home on Edward Street, and we don't have an existing sewer line along Edward Street. But Nancy can go through the background and discussions we did have in the past with the applicant regarding the requirement for them to install the sewer along Edward Street to serve their new dwelling.
Nancy.
And if you could just put the microphone closer to you, because it's
Sorry. Is that better? Good.
it seems, I think so.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, let me know and I'll move it again.
Okay.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gilliman. So the prospective owner at the times had Mr. Sewhdat had come and contacted engineering prior to purchasing the property. And he had a number of questions in regards to servicing. So as Mr. Ramuno had indicated, there is no sewer infrastructure on Edward Street currently. So there are no residential homes in this area that need to be serviced. So there is no sewer main on Edward. The commercial properties are serviced through perpendicular streets on Cousins Drive and Kennedy. So there was just no need for a sewer main. There is a water main and stormwater infrastructure, however. So at the time when, prior to purchasing the property that had been severed, we had sat down and explained this to Mr. Sewhdat, and also explained to him at the time what infrastructure he would need to install, and provided him with detailed engineering drawings of the infrastructure available to him.
Counselor?
Thank you. When you're saying Sewhdat, you mean the architect?
No, the
Nancy?
homeowner now.
The homeowner now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the counselor. Yes, prior to purchasing the severed land, so there was a memo of understanding when the land was severed during the application process. And prior to Mr. Sewhdat purchasing the land to build his home on, he had contacted engineering to determine what type of servicing was going to be required and what infrastructure was currently available for him to connect to.
Counselor?
Thank you. And because there's no servicing directly on Edward, there's no other, what you're saying, there's no other way of doing it. It has to be this, I guess, extra large main that's going to be connected for anybody who decides to build on Edward moving forward.
Nancy?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gillian. So it's a standard size main, Councillor. So we require a 200 millimeter main, which is an 8-inch sanitary main. That's our standard main for servicing. That's part of our design criteria and standards. So everything that is built within the town has to adhere to these engineering standards, design criteria, and they are available to anyone on our website. And also when you call the engineering department, we walk you through those requirements. So on a regular type of lot or subdivision, you have a service connection from your home to the main. But in this case, for the sanitary main, since there is none, they are required to build the 8-inch main in the middle of the street, which is part of our design criteria, in order to connect to the downhill main, which is on Cousins, which is approximately 90 meters from the resident's home currently.
Counselor?
Thank you. Sounds like a lot of bad luck in a way. I don't know what to say. I'd like to say that, you know, the 25 millimeters or whatever that one, that is standard that they want to do, that's something that's just not possible. It has to be the 20. There's no negotiating. There's no, it's the 200 or it's nothing. That's the only option. I just want to fully understand that.
Nancy?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gillian. So a service connection is 125 millimeters, which is what everyone who has a residential home connects from their home to the main, which is the 200 millimeter main, the main. So we can't, once the asset is built, we would take it over to operate and maintain it for the life cycle of the asset, which is, in this case, would be approximately 80 years. So in order for operations to properly operate and maintain that asset, they have to be able to inspect it. They need to be able to clean it and inspect and CCTV it. So if we allowed for a 125 millimeter service connection, which is what the owner is requesting from his home 90 meters to Cousins Drive to connect, we wouldn't have the ability to properly operate and maintain that. It would be an ultra long service connection, which just wouldn't be in our best interest from an infrastructure standpoint. We would need the proper means so we could CCTV that and inspect it on a regular basis and clean it as required. Because if there is a backup or something happens within that main, that is our infrastructure and our responsibility.
Counselor?
Fully understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Gallo? On this side.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a great explanation. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just some clarity on communication. I got the feeling that they were unaware of their obligations from when they first started. But I got the sense from you that it was clear in your meetings what was necessary. Is that accurate to you, Mr. Mayor?
Nancy?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gallo, there's been multiple opportunities where we've had the opportunity to speak to both the homeowner's contractor and the homeowner's surveyor during different times over the past 6 months in regards to sanitary servicing. They have provided us, in order for us to provide them a quote through our sanitary contractor for the servicing, they in fact gave us a drawing that we approved in regards to this 200 millimeter main, their water service, which they will also need to connect, and their sanitary service.
Counselor.
So was the town ever approving the I guess what the homeowner is recommending? Did the town ever give approval of that or entertain that?
Nancy.
Mayor to Councillor Gallo, no, we have not approved that. We discussed it and then we explained to the homeowner why we would not be able to move forward with that, why it was unfeasible and it didn't meet our design standards.
Counselor.
Okay, makes sense. To me, there's some clearly difference of opinions going on, but regardless of that, we have to maintain our protocols and proper procedures and infrastructure. So I don't see how we can deviate that for this homeowner, especially if we're taking over those assets and be able to, as was said, CTC scan it, clean them, do everything we need to do afterwards. It wouldn't make sense to me to deviate from that for this project.
Councilor Weiss, new business. Pardon? Oh, there's more on this one? Okay, go ahead.
To it.
Oh, no business.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Council.
Thank you. I'm done with responding with you. This is something separate. Through Mr. Mayor to Ms. McDougall, in response to the second delegate in regards to the allocation of the tennis court. I know we did receive an email kind of outlining a little bit of kind of what had occurred through the delegation tonight and some of the conversation. Could you maybe add some clarity to the situation and maybe what we could do to help solve it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can help clarify. Certainly for the last couple of years in our allocation policy for tennis courts, there isn't a provision under 5.5 that permits the special occasion opportunity where we can amend how courts are utilized. Therefore, in light of COVID, we did issue permits on court number 3, where typically the policy speaks to only offering and eligible to offer courts on Fleury only and only on 2 of the 4 courts. Last year, we extended last 2 years, we extended that offer to Mr. Liu for court number 3. All candidates for the last 2 years have also been sent information that was done in recognition of COVID. There was no guarantee going forward. Subsequently, we couldn't guarantee or commit. That being said, he did submit his request for this year on court number 3. The issue that has happened is we did proceed, one of our booking staff did proceed and issue the permit. The date I have was February, I think it's 18th. Unfortunately, once we recognized the policy and there was no need to consider the COVID impact any longer, it was revoked on March 7th. So it's about 3 weeks there where he had a permit in hand. When that happened, staff did try to go back and accommodate him on any additional or amended requests. He submitted a request for 12 hours. We were able to accommodate those 12 hours on courts 1 and 2 in line with our policy. However, they're not the hours he would have preferred, but they still fall in line with the policy. He has signed back that permit and paid for that permit. So at this point, it's a matter of following our policy. There definitely was a situation where a policy or a permit had been issued and was retracted, but that was in recognition of our current policy. And certainly messaging has been issued to all the participants that there was no guarantee going forward. However, there definitely was a little bit of a miss there, but we feel we've accommodated him as best we can on courts 1 and 2. He asked for 12, we were able to give him 12. So that's sort of where we're at based on the update and feedback I have. I did attempt myself to reach out to Mr. Liu left him a voice message, hoping to speak with him. In light of his delegation notes, I wanted to try to clarify circumstances with him. Although I know Mason our staff member had already attempted to do so. Unfortunately, I didn't hear back from Mr. Liu, so I wasn't able to get to him before tonight to try to help clarify. But that being said, I think our staff have done the best we can to stay within our policy while still accommodating Mr. Liu.
Counselor?
Thank you. I appreciate that. That really does help explain things. I'm glad that you were able to accommodate him for the 12 hours requested. I do know that we are looking at our allocation policy and permitting, and we are doing some review. With this experience, do you foresee that maybe there's room in our policy, not necessarily on these courts, but maybe opportunity in other courts where maybe some of that demand could be fulfilled if our policy was maybe tweaked to accommodate some of that growing demand?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I know staff at a request, we did come back to council and amended the policy just a couple of years ago, where council agreed to only permit permits on Fleury for tennis and for tennis lessons. And subsequently, the policy was amended to only accommodate on 2 of the 3 or 4 courts. I think there's also through the allocation policy, certainly there's things we can be considering that maybe could be tweaked related to private businesses, operating businesses on public properties. But that being said, could be expanded. That's council's wish. We could do so. We've also at this point just recently narrowed in on Fleury. So it'd be reversing that decision, which was based only a few years ago.
Councilor?
Great, thank you. Well, maybe it's something to think about. I don't know, while we're in this development stage. Obviously, there's a lot of competition for courts in general right now, pickleball, I guess, maybe, and tennis. So I guess it's food for thought. But thank you so much for accommodating. Appreciate it.
Councilor Gallo on this one?
So he had mentioned that there was, in his view, an oversight of issuing permits for the last 2 years, which clearly was not an oversight. It was done on purpose to allow access to the courts. The oversight was that we did issue a permit to him, and then we revoked it because we changed our policy. There was no need for that activity. I guess and we did give him the hours that he requested afterwards. Do we know how many hours he originally requested with the permit that was issued? To you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, I don't believe I have that email. I'll do a quick search. I do not believe I have that handy.
I'm just trying to gauge, through Mr. Mayor, the impact that he would have had after having the permit and getting clients to enroll in his program, and then we revoked it, and what that impact would have had on him. Notwithstanding, we did give him, I think it's 20 hours or 12 hours, whatever it was.
Oh, I'm still up. Thank you if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor. I'll attempt this. Mr. Leo's original request was for 12 hours on court number 1. But it was the prime time, 6 to 9. Available based on the allocation policy at that time, we provided him 8, but that was with court 3. Then we retracted that. So in the end, his updated request was for 12 hours and we accommodated him for 12 hours.
Okay, so I guess because of our error, we couldn't have accommodated him in those 12 hours. It would be taking away, obviously, some public time, but could there have been a possibility to give him the hours that he had originally asked for and gotten and then revoked?
Yes, McDougall.
Through Mr. Mayor, certainly the permit could be reinstated, provided on court number 3. But again, for staff, it went against the policy that we were trying to follow based on council's direction. So we were trying to correct something and abide by our own policy, which does not permit us to provide permits with the exception of court 1 and 2. His request was for court 3 during prime time, which would take away time from public, which is probably why council initially determined only 1 and 2. But to accommodate them is the issue. Yes, it can be done.
Counselor?
Yeah, and all that makes sense, other than that we made a mistake and we issued a permit, and then he went out and got clients to fill that spot, I assume, and then couldn't because we revoked it. So anyway, that's my view. I say we give him the time that he originally had, and going forward, make sure we issue permits accordingly.
Counselor Gilliland, any more new business? Counselor Weiss, no new business? Counselor Gardner, new business? You're on mute, Counselor. You're on mute, Counselor. Still on mute. You're okay? All right. Well, then I'm going to ask you PSA. Do you have any PSA? Public service announcement? No? No. Okay. Councilor Reese. I'm learning how to read lips now. It's a requirement of the job.
No, I just wanted to thank the town for the outstanding job that was done last weekend for thousands of people who participated in the IIHF. I want to thank the community services people and Haley for all the work that was done there. It was a tremendous event and it raised the profile of this town tremendously in the hockey world for sure, and particularly for female hockey.
Thank you. Councilor Gilliland, PSAs. Oh, Councilor Gallo? No. Councilor Kim, any public service announcements? No. Okay. I'll just expand upon Councilor Reese's comments in regards to the IIHF tournament. It was phenomenal. As Councilor Reese mentioned, staff did a phenomenal job, and I think we're proud of the work that Haley and the entire team did. One thing I can say is that I met with the coach from the Switzerland team. And he was standing there before the game looking around and he said, man, I wish we came and stayed in Aurora as well. And so I think there's going to be a lot of good comments coming out from the teams themselves in regards to how they felt being hosted here in the town of Aurora. So tremendous job by everyone, staff, council, everyone showed. It was a phenomenal game, and Team Sweden, the home team, won 1-0. It was the last 2 minutes, I think, were probably very frantic and it was exciting. And I think the crowd loved it. The teams loved it. And I know that there's quite a contingency from the town of Aurora going out this week to the preliminary rounds to watch Sweden as well. So I'm excited to watch them and follow their journey through the tournament as well. So as I mentioned at the tournament, we consider them our team at this time because we hosted them. So we're looking forward to their progression through the tournament. I did have some others. Oh, Councilor Gardner, did you have something? Go ahead.
I found, I figured out how to unmute myself, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that Holocaust Remembrance Day occurs on the 18th. And it marks a terrible tragedy in the history of the Jewish people. Passover begins tomorrow evening. And so I like to wish all of our Jewish residents a happy Passover. And then, of course, we have Easter Friday and Sunday and all of those celebrations. So happy and safe holidays. Thank you, Mr.
You're welcome. Thank you. And just a few more. Easter long weekend is here, and the town has some family-friendly fun with expanded Easter holiday weekend programs and activities. Full details are available online at aurora.ca/holiday schedules. That includes our annual Hello Spring event, which is back, and everyone can join us Saturday, April 8th, and explore various spring-themed outdoor and interactive family activities such as crafts, face painting, egg fishing, a hopsicle course, and more. And you can even have your photo taken with the Easter Bunny. And what I will say, it's not the creepy Easter Bunny we used to have. That costume was terrible. But now we have a much better costume that is, I think, a little bit more family friendly. So wristbands are $5 and are available at the Aurora Community Center. More details are available at aurora.ca/hellospring. Also, applications are now being accepted for this year's John West Memorial Scholarship. The scholarship is open to all Aurora students entering their first year of full-time post-secondary study, and the deadline to apply is May 1st. And for more details, please visit aurora.ca/leaders of tomorrow. And don't miss the Aurora Chamber Home and Living Show from Saturday, April 15th and Sunday, April 16th at the SARC. There'll be over 150 vendors on site that will be able to provide expert advice while showcasing their products and services. There will be live food demos, do-it-yourself demos, and fun interactive shows for the kids. And don't forget to visit the Town of Aurora's booth, where staff will be sharing information about Town Square progress and for your opportunity to win a VIP hard hat tour of this new state-of-the-art space. And keep Aurora beautiful. Our annual community cleanup day will take place on Saturday, April 22nd from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Invite your family and friends, choose a location, and register now. Registrants will receive a cleanup kit while supplies last. Full event details can be found at aurora.ca/cleanup. Councilor Reese, did you have something to add?
Sorry, I forgot to make a mention about the April 6th Humboldt Broncos crash. It's a memorial. Those are people who are interested in memorializing them, put sticks out on their front porches. We have a banner in the ACC to memorialize them, and I just didn't want the day to pass without a comment. So thank you. I'm sorry I didn't say it earlier.
That's fine. I appreciate that. And I don't normally bring up when I have conversations, whether it's with the ministers or the premiers, but I did have a nice conversation with the premier, and that might be hard to believe for some, but we did have a great conversation. We talked about how we can work together in the best interest of not only the province, but also the town of Aurora. So we're going to continue working together to get things done. So with that said, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Gallo, second. Councillor Reese. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.